Power Rangers, or more specifically, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It was a hit TV show starting in 1993.
The show took fighting scenes from a Japanese show Koryu Sentai Zyuranger and strung a plot together with scenes shot with American actors.
It was awesome, at least to a 5-year-old. Much like other children's shows at the time, you didn't just watch the show, you lived it. You had comic books, merchandise, VHS tapes, board games, toys, gosh, a lot of toys, and of course, video games.
There was a game released on every major video game console at the time. You had the Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Game Gear, Sega Genesis, and even the Sega CD. Growing up, my very first system was the Sega Genesis. We were a Sega household.
I didn't play a Mario game until the Game Boy Advance, so I don't really have much experience with Nintendo ones, but the Sega ones I do.
The Genesis version is a one-on-one fighting game. Much like other fighting games at the time, it took heavy influence from Street Fighter 2, but it is much more simpler, using only 2 buttons to attack, which then enables me to use my tried and true button mashing to get me by.
I'm not very good at fighting games at all.
Each Power Ranger plays very similarly, only the special attacks change between them. You go through fighting different monsters from the series, the sprite work is done very well, and the monsters all fight very differently from one another. Once you defeat a monster as a ranger, Rita sends her staff down and makes her monster grow, which then means it's time to form the Megazord. This whole sequence with that signature Genesis twang just fits Power Rangers like a glove. The Megazord just feels awesome to play as. The game goes like this pretty much the whole time, using the old Monster of the Week formula as an arcade mode. The only time it breaks from that is when you have to fight the evil Green Ranger.
As a kid, I could never beat him. And since he's only the second opponent in the game, I could never go further and beat the game. Well, I got more years experience under my belt. Maybe I could actually beat him this time. Oh my god, it's like the difficulty shoots up to 11 or something. It's like I'm fighting against a tournament player. I got it. Maybe the manual will help me. There's gotta be something in there. Timeouts, yes. If I can't win fair and square, I sure can cheese my way through.
Unlike other fighting games, the stage you play in doesn't have any boundaries on the side of it. It just infinitely loops. Therefore, if I get advantage of even a single hit, then dodge the rest of the match, that should do it.
There we go. Now that wasn't so hard.
Since the Green Ranger is not a monster, he doesn't grow. He calls the Dragonzord.
Oh, I'm gonna lose, aren't I? Yep. I have nothing to prove.
Alright, once you defeat both the Green Ranger and Dragonzord, a cutscene plays showing the Red Ranger breaking the curse on Tommy and him joining the Power Rangers, which then allows you to play as the Green Ranger for the rest of the game. The final boss of the game takes place on the moon in front of Rita's Moon Palace, allowing you to choose between the Megazord and the Dragonzord. Once Cyclopsis is defeated... Wait, he's got a second form? With one last fight, and the Rangers combining all their Zords to form the Ultrazord, they blast away at the palace, ending the game.
While not an outstanding game, it utilizes the brand very well, and it's fun to bring it out every couple years or so. Now, I don't own a Sega CD. I mean, where am I going to plug it in?
I wanted to touch on it for a little. It's an FMV game playing clips from the show, and it throws button prompts at you, I guess to make sure you're paying attention. It has about the same amount of gameplay as a YouTube video does. Not much at all. Still, hopefully one day I can add the game to my collection. It's not the first time I got a game without owning the system it's on. I got a Super Mario Duck Hunt and World Class Track Meet game. I don't even own an NES.
The final Sega version, the Game Gear version. I hope you have 6 double A's on hand.
This is a hybrid fighting and beat 'em up. You stay on one screen while the enemies come running up to you one at a time. The putty patrols have very little health, most being defeated with one hit. The Game Gear only has 2 buttons for attacks, but there is a pretty deep moveset. Most of it can be used by just hitting different directions on the D-pad and tried and true button mashing. The running physics can feel a little weird at first, but it does keep a fast pace going. Like the Genesis version, you fight a monster of the week at the end of every stage. Again, like the Genesis version, once the monster is defeated, it's time to form the Megazord. It's a little weird at first for you to be moving so fast, considering you're multiple stories tall. But the gameplay is fast as ever. I'll even say it, it's better combat-wise than the home console version. It also adapts scenarios from the show better, like when you're going against the evil Green Ranger, it goes through a normal ending with a boss fight with him. When it's time to play as the Megazord, you fight Goldar and then a giant Green Ranger, just like the show. The next stage you start out fighting the Dragonzord. It's reversed, with the second stage being the final fight with Tommy. For a handheld game, the sprite work holds up pretty well. It has even more animated cutscenes than the home console version. What's most interesting is that this version actually has an exclusive Zord to play as. In addition to the Megazord and Dragonzord, you get the combination Dragonzord in battle mode. A very welcomed addition. And just like the Genesis version, the final boss is Cyclopsis. However, the first stage, you go through a boss rush fighting every single boss in the game, ending with Goldar. This final level is really hard, even on easy mode.
By this point, my hands were cramping, my eyes were straining, I just wanted the game to be over. So, I may have used the cheat code for infinite health. Oh look, I beat the game.
The game has a third mode alongside story mode and two-player linked game, Versus mode, which I thought was the two-player mode, but it actually plays like a traditional fighting game arcade mode. The Game Gear version actually gives a lot of value.
And there we have it, all Mighty Morphin Power Ranger games on SEGA Systems. Well, except there are more, but those for the 1995 movie, and I'll talk about those some other time. But for now, I think I'm going to go through some of my old things. I think I really need that right now. Oh! It's morphin' time! Yeah! Oh man, what else we got in here? Oh man, look at this bootleg figure. Look at that. Jeez. We got the Black Ranger, we got the Pink Ranger, we got the Yellow Ranger, we got the Blue Ranger, we got even the Green Ranger, and we got the White Ranger, although he doesn't really look white that much anymore.